do that.
With the money rolling in, Hubbard moved to California, where he'd play his last great role. His ambition was to film sci-fi blockbusters based on his books, but he ended up making Scientology training films.
The movie mogul, Cecil B. DeMille. You know, it was like he was. He tried to be bigger than life, but he just wasn't. So he would make these extravagant sets. They were ludicrous. They were not big productions. They were just silliness. They were an egomaniac. He tried to be flustery and big and powerful, but if you looked, just stepped and observed, you could see that he had fear about everything. And finally the fear came down to dust particles. Little teeny dust particles.
He had phobias about dust. He had phobias about smells. He had phobias about sounds. So he would hear sounds that weren't there. He would scream at the sound technician. And he would see things that weren't there, and he would scream at the people who were framing the shot. And he would smell smells that weren't there, and he'd have people rinse his clothing some 13 or 15 or however many times.
In 1977, while Hubbard was away making movies, the FBI caught up with the Snow White operation and raided Scientology headquarters in Los Angeles and Washington. Hubbard's wife, Mary Sue, and 8 other Scientology executives were convicted and sentenced for conspiracy and stealing government documents. Hubbard disappeared, never to be seen publicly again. After living in a succession of hiding places, he ended up on this secluded ranch in the California hills. Secrecy has veiled his final years, but one man, Robert Vaughan Young, who was then a Scientology public relations officer, was later given a description of Hubbard by one of his guardians. This, and evidence from Hubbard's autopsy report, paint a sad picture.
He had grown a beard, he had grown his long hair. The nails were long, very much in the same problem as they found out with Howard Hughes, unkempt nails. Neighbors, there was a neighbor that walked in on him one day, and he'd become very frightened and suddenly scurried out of the barn. He was frightened to meet people. He was terrified of meeting any new people. He was disappearing down into this little strange world of his that he had created. And the irony of this is a man that was promulgating and telling the world that with my technology and ideas you can get bigger and bigger and bigger, and yet he was shrinking down until finally he was hiding.
On January the 24th, 1986, Ron Hubbard died. The Church of Scientology said he'd simply quit his body to continue his work elsewhere.
Him dying suddenly made him very mortal, and the last thing we could have is to have Hubbard be mortal. So a story had to be designed, and the story is that he went off to research the next level. And what's amazing is how the Scientologists bought this without any questioning. They bought it.
Today, the L Ron Hubbard image is carefully protected by the Church of Scientology. It says he is the greatest humanitarian in history. Hollywood has named a street after him, and millions of dollars roll into Scientology every year. It continues to preach that Hubbard's teachings are the best solution to the mental problems of the world. The personal tragedy is, one mind Scientology did not appear to help was that of its founder.
Secret Lives next Wednesday at 9 profiles the holiday camp king Billy Butlin. Our film next tonight on 4 is Caddyshack.